What's up, everyone? I am Trebus with SC2 Noob School and GLHF Magazine. This is Terran Bronze-to-Diamond, and we are in Gold League today. So we're going to be watching Andy B in a Terran versus Zerg. And what I want to focus on, every one of these episodes, I like to kind of try to focus on a few things. We obviously can't analyze everything in the replay unless you want it to be like hours and hours long. So I like to just take a few things that are significant out of each replay and really focus on those. And for this replay, I want to talk about two things. I want to talk about choosing your engagements, both when you're going to engage and where you're going to engage, and how that can change depending on what your army is, what your opponent's army is, the map, all those kinds of things, everything that has to do with making that engagement choice. And I also want to talk about adjusting your build, adjusting your unit composition to what your opponent is doing. In this game, we're going to see Andy B. He's going to go for, it's mostly a mech style, but there's some bio in there as well. And that's one of the things that I kind of want to address that I think is, I think it hurts this build more than it helps it, the diversity of the units. So just looking at the beginning of the build, not gonna, go real slow with it because Andy B is doing a good job with this build. He's doing the typical Hellion expansion where you get your reactor up on the barracks, get your factory out, and then get your command center right before you get two Hellions out. And then you can send your Hellions out on the map, take map control, deny creep tumors, all those things. It's really a staple build all of you Terran players should absolutely know. There's just one thing that I think Andy B is doing incorrectly in this build, and it comes after the Hellions come out. So adding on this second gas here, a slightly early second, I guess it's not really an early second gas, not for the build he's going for, but we're just gonna watch what happens here. So he gets his Hellions out. I like a lot of what Andy is doing here. He's going, clearing the watchtowers. This is the type of map control that you get from having Hellions out. Probably don't pause by the towers like that, but unavoidable. Checking that watchtower as well. And then the thing you want to do is go deny creep tumors as much as you can. He doesn't have a spine crawler, so if you were actually confident in your micro, you could just kite this queen over and over again, force him to make more lings than he needed to. Kind of a missed opportunity to do that. It'd really be nice to force the Zerg to either move the spine crawler or make another spine crawler to protect over here. Also, you could poke in from the sides. If your multitasking will allow it, these two Hellions are certainly capable of doing that. Okay, so going back to Andy's build, you can see kind of the direction he's going with it. Getting 3 factories out, so it's going to be a lot of mech. Going to be Hellions out of one factory, and it's going to end up being Thors out of the other factory. Adding on a few more Hellions. Okay, this is a time that Andy B, I would be not surprised at all if he loses quite a few games right around this time. What a lot of Zergs like to do now in response to this Hellion opening is they like to get their expansion up, protect it, throw down a Roach Warren, which real whoever already has, and then they'll make like 6 to 8 roaches. And they'll just go straight to your base with the roaches. If the Hellions try to counter, then usually they've got lings and spine crawlers and queens, and they can defend. And they'll push with these roaches, and if you only have Hellions and Marines, then the roaches can kill quite a lot. So usually you have to build a bunker here, and that's what I would recommend to anyone else doing this build is build a bunker. Unless you can say for sure that they're not going for the roach thing, then you're probably gonna just lose some games straight up because of that. So definitely be aware of that. Getting the armory up. Like I said, this is going to be a Thor heavy build. Pushing in with these Hellions I think is awesome. Getting to kill some of those Zerglings and seeing just a very small amount of roaches, that number of roaches is not something I would fear. Okay, and I'm gonna just speed up. And in a minute here is where I really start having some problems with this build going in too many different directions. Okay, so 3 factories. You would think this would be a mech build, but actually Andy is going for a bio mech build where it's going to be Hellions, Thors, and Marauders with STEM. So it's a pretty hardcore, I guess, anti-ground army. But the problem I have with it is that he ends up spending a lot of money and a lot of resources on things like STEM, you know, getting tech labs, getting upgrades for infantry, when really the majority of his investment is going into factory units. So I would actually prefer that he cut out the barracks production completely. At this point anyway, don't get this upgrade. Get more armory upgrades for all your Thors, and just go straight for that. So he's doing a good job of trying to deny this third as much as possible with the Hellions, staying off the creep. This is a really good example of good Hellion control. You can see he's not getting greedy with the Hellions. He's not saying, well, I want to run in and win the game with the Hellions right now. He's not trying to do that. There are opportunities to use this little passage to maybe poke in and do some damage, but I would rather see keeping these Hellions alive versus being a little too ambitious with them and ending up losing them. Obviously, this is a very, very gas-heavy build, so as soon as he's expanding, he's getting those Thespian geysers up as quickly as possible, and getting just a pretty solid army of Hellion, Thor, some of those initial Marines, and then it's just going to be, well, he is getting Marines and Marauders. So, actually, let's go back here. Okay, so Andy here gets to see, every time you get to do this, when you poke in with something like, you know, these Hellions or something, this is a great opportunity because lots of Zergs will allow you to see their entire army. So now he's getting to see the entire army, and what my reaction to this would be is, well, what is this army? This is a hardcore anti-ground army. It's not going to kill any single thing in the air. So what I would be thinking about is how I counter this army. He's got a decent composition going. Obviously, the Thors are going to be good versus Banelings and Roaches in small numbers. But I would start thinking about adding in some tanks here. The tanks can just make the Banelings absolutely worthless. Banelings can be cost-effective against Thors if they, I think if they hit 3 Thors, then they can be cost-effective. But if you have a few tanks in there, you can eliminate the Banelings completely. And tanks are also amazing against Roaches. So a composition that you could kind of sway into or change into without much of an investment, only getting, you know, 100 gas for siege tech, is to sprinkle in a few tanks in there. But the main point is to, whenever you get to poke in with these Hellions, which is an awesome move to do, look as much as you can at the opponent's unit composition and then make adjustments if you feel like you need to. Again, I wish there was a second armory here because there's just so many factory units coming out. Obviously, supply block isn't good, but you all know that. So we see this big attack coming in, and it's going to do a bit of damage. I'm thinking in my head right now, I wonder if I had a couple tanks, how much better this would go. The Roaches come in, they're able to target down a couple Thors. They don't get too many SCVs. There's a bunker nicely placed with some Marauders or some Marines in it, and gonna scare that off pretty easily. That was a good attack for Andy. And that was the most important thing here. The other big thing I was going to talk about is choosing your engagements and choosing where to engage. That was a great spot to engage with this giant Roach army, because it basically forced the Roaches into a small area, and you can fit more Thors in terms of cost effectiveness in a small area than you can Roaches, and the Thors will do much better if they can engage Roaches in a small area. continuing on with this idea of choosing your engagements, here is where I think this is where the game really changed directions. Andy B is going to go in for an attack here. I guess let's go ahead and watch it. So he goes in for an attack, scanning to see the army, and then a couple things happen here to make it really bad for him. Okay. So he's gonna eventually, the Zerg is eventually gonna clean this up. Cleaning up everything. And what went badly there? Well, let's look. Okay, basically, he's going to attack into the most wide open spot on this map. It's actually incredible how wide open this area is, which can be good and bad for Zerg players. If there's an engagement here, the Zerg can get an amazing surround. They just have so much space to get a gigantic arc. So I would prefer if Andy B would attack from, this would be a better spot. It's not a big choke point, but it's certainly better than this ridiculously open space right here. You could attack there and force the roaches to come into you. Or even go around this side and attack here, kind of like the attack, the roach Thor attack that came there. You saw how well that went, so why not do it again to your opponent? He would have a really tough time getting a lot of units in here to actually fight all of these Thors. Two other things happen in this battle that make it a loss. Okay, first thing, Thors need to be in the back. These Hellions, yeah, they do damage, they kill Zerglings, they kill Banelings, okay. They're also a really great meat shield. For only 100 minerals, you get 90 life of meat shield, so that's pretty darn good. So the Hellions definitely should be in the front, and then watch all these Banelings getting some actually amazing hits on the Thors. Those were actually cost-effective Banelings versus Thors, I think. And if they weren't, then they were darn close. So that was the other thing, though. Those three things went very badly in this engagement, and it ends up not being a total loss for the Terran player, but it could have gone a lot better. So, alright, we're gonna go. So we just looked at an engagement. I told you the things we were gonna think about was the engagements and then adjusting your unit composition. As soon as you lose a giant army, hey, that's an opportunity. That's an opportunity to change your unit composition. Zergs do it all the time, and they're notoriously good at doing it because of how their tech works, but that doesn't mean that a Terran player is stuck. Yeah, Andy is not stuck making Thors and Hellions. If he doesn't want to make any Thors and Hellions, he doesn't have to make any Thors and Hellions. He can switch out these add-ons and completely change his unit composition, or at the very least, he could just start getting tanks instead of Thors, or just get a few tanks instead of Thors. And I think this is really the spot where Andy, he misses out on the ability to make those tanks, because those tanks, if you got 4 or 5 tanks against this kind of roach army, and then had some Hellions in there to absorb a lot of damage, and maybe just some Thors in case there's a spire coming up or anything, then that would work really, really well. And even if you wanted to, you know, switch out this factory with a barracks, get that reactor on the barracks, add a few more barracks, get Marines instead. I mean, it is an opportunity to change your build order based on what your opponent is going to do. The thing I would recommend before you do that is spend a scan either on their army or on a tech location, either their natural or their main, probably their main, and just make sure they aren't getting a spire, because that would be the only thing that would really be detrimental to this build, is if maybe you had all ground except for 1 or 2 Thors, and then a spire came out and, you know, your army's gone. So really great job being active with these Hellions here. And then here's a moment where you get to see the army. Yes, it is the exact same unit composition. The Zerg player has not changed at all, and so those tanks would have been an amazingly good choice versus this composition. So I'm going to kind of speed through the rest of this. only taking note of the those two things that we were talking about still, which is choosing where to engage and changing your unit composition. Okay, so here the attack comes in. Could have gotten an earlier repair on that, obviously, and the Zerg makes a very smart decision to just back off. Just leave. Okay, and then here is really the final engagement that matters of this game. And look at the kind of arc that the Zerg player gets once again. This whole area is wide open, and you're going to see these roaches just get an insanely good arc. Amazing arc versus all these Thors. Not even all the Thors are attacking the right thing. Sometimes they were using their, javelin missiles on like overlords and stuff. And the Zerg is able to clean this up pretty cost effectively. Zerg also has a third base up, which the Terran does not. Thors versus roaches. Thors versus roaches is an interesting battle, because Thors can be really good against roaches, but they have to have some kind of buffer in the way, and they are made so much better by having a few tanks in the back. It's really kind of amazing. So last little engagement here. Zerg's gonna come in, break down the back rocks. Terran basically has no production, and there's the GG. So I hope that made sense to you Terran players. You know, everyone talks about Zergs doing tech switches, but like it's impossible for anyone else to do a tech switch. And while that's to some extent true, where a Zerg can actually just completely turn around and make an exact, opposite unit in the flip of a switch, every other race can do something similar, especially Terran with the ability to change add-ons and stuff like that. And it's totally legit to do that and to change where your build is going and adjust to what your opponent is doing. All right, well, this was gold. We got platinum coming up for Terran, so I hope you keep watching. This is Trebus with SC2 Noob School and GLHFmag.com. Keep watching. GG.